there, we should be live. Hello, everybody. I guess we are live. We should be live. Yes. Welcome to this, I lost count, 6, I think, or 7 food design webinar. Today, my guest of honor is Deger Ozkaramanli.
Very good.
It's a lot of consonants and vowels, so I did my best. Welcome there.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
So welcome to all of you who are here watching live and to those of you who will be watching the recording later on. Today we're going to have, I think, an extremely useful discussion about something that happens to everybody in the world of design. So the conversation that we are going to have today and the research, through the research that Deger is going to present to us, applies to food designers, but at large to any designer, possibly any human being on the world, on the planet. We're going to talk about dilemmas, personal dilemmas, and how we deal with them in design. I felt like I had to say something about, what I want to do, guys, of course, as always, when we start, feel free to please, actually not feel free, please write in the chat room from where you are connecting, what time it is for you, maybe. I'm in Italy, it's 5 p.m. and there also is in the Netherlands, so Europe as well, 5 p.m., about tea time for us. So let us know where you are. Also, let us know what brought you here, what you would like to have from this webinar. And most importantly, at any time, if you have any questions, just put them down in the chat room and I will read them to you there as they come through. So without further ado, Deger, tell us a little bit about yourself and what life journey brought you to today here in this webinar with us.
Thanks, Francesca. It's very nice to be here and also to reconnect with you after a long time that we were not in touch. So my name is Deger Ozkaramanli. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Twente. That's in the very east of the Netherlands, almost on the German border. And before actually we start, maybe I have a question for our audience. I would like, because later on we're gonna get into this topic, I would like to ask, what is design thinking to you? Don't look it up on the internet. Just type whatever comes to your mind if you're familiar with the topic.
So write these answers in the chat room, guys, and I will be reading them to Deger as they come through.
That's very good. Yeah. So assistant professor, what does it mean? It means basically I'm teaching half the time design to bachelor and master students. And the other half of my time, I'm doing research into design and into design practices. I also really like creating. I don't have much time for doing design myself, which is a pity. But that means that I use the creativity that comes with being a designer in cooking and mostly baking. So that's my outlet for creating things, for the creativity. And of course, I try to do projects whenever I can, food-related projects, food design-related projects in my practice.
Brilliant. So we have somebody from Italy connecting, Cinzia from Italy, we have Camila from Colombia, Simona also from Italy, and Sofia also from Italy. I've never had so many people from Italy. Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Again, for those who are joining now, tell us in the chat room where you're from. If at any moment you have questions for us, put it in the chat room and I'll be reading them. And also Deger just asked us, what is design thinking for you? And as you write down your answers, I'll read them through. In the meantime, Deger, what do you think, one of the questions that I like to ask to my guests in this period is, what do you think food design maybe specifically, can do for the current global situation that we are living?
Yes, the current global, the C word, Corona, we don't use it. Right. Yes, I thought about this question actually quite a lot, even before we got in touch for this webinar. what really surprised me at the beginning, like with the first lockdown last year already in March, is we stopped doing everything except for two things. Working for most people. I had a job that I could work from home, which makes me lucky, I think. But the second thing is eating, and we could keep eating the things that we used to eat before, or at least for me, that was the case. Nothing really changed. At the beginning, people were scared a little bit, so people were really buying a lot of food and stocking up at home. And then we realized that we're not really running out of tomato sauce in the supermarket or bread in the supermarket. And yeah, when you think about it, you may really interpret this as, oh, we're so lucky. We organized our food systems in such a way that we can survive a crisis situation. But that's only true for some of the countries, for the lucky few. And then I think we also really need to step back and think about who is paying the cost of us comfortably still buying avocados and tomato sauce in the supermarket, even in such a big crisis situation. And then I think it's the poorer countries where they have a lot of natural resources, but maybe not so much the financial resources to keep. They pick up the tab of keeping these food systems up and running. And I think that this is something that food designers maybe are already paying attention to, but these inequalities in food systems, the social inequalities the current food systems create, I think is definitely something that we should be doing something about.
Definitely. Yeah. And actually, the next question that I wanted to ask you possibly relates to this answer, depending on how you take it. But are there some trends that you're currently excited about?
Yes. One of the things, maybe it's also, I interpret it as the influence of the corona situation as well. It's certainly true in my personal experience. I was already considering for a long time, but I became a vegetarian with the corona. Like that was it for me. I think I really needed that trigger. And then I see these numbers increasing. It could be selective attention that I'm thinking more about it and paying more attention to it, that I really notice people in my own social circle. But then I read also in the newspaper, and I don't really remember, I'm horrible with numbers and percentages, qualitative researcher here. But this number also increased compared to, let's say, 10 years, 15 years ago. And that is something that really excites me, that there is more awareness about how the meat industry works and what we can do as individuals, also as designers about it, is to support this trend of becoming a vegetarian. So that's one. And another thing that's happening a little bit outside of food design, but I think it will influence food design because in the end it is a design practice, is that designers are becoming a little bit more sensitive to the political nature of the profession, of the discipline. And that also means that we are becoming more sensitive to the social inequalities that are in the world, that are created by food systems and other systems, and trying to see how the discipline, the profession, both from the research angle but also from the practice angle, what we can do about this. The topics such as gender bias, but not just gender bias and discrimination based on race, age, socioeconomic status. All of these things are being talked about more and being written about more in the media. And then this also brings a lot of awareness, I think, to the profession, that we cannot just let ourselves be led by the market thinking and the existing systems in the market, but to take a more proactive role in changing and reframing those systems in the benefit of all rather than in the benefit of only the people who can purchase the things that we design.
Definitely. Well, we have an answer. For me, Simona from Italy. For me, design thinking is the process that designers need to use to make things that matter for the world.
Very good.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Simona.
Yeah, for sure. I think that with regards to the vegan vegetarian trend, or plant-based, actually, probably it's the better term because it's the part of veganism that also discusses very much health as much as ethical issues and sustainability. So with regards to this, I think that it's undeniable today that it's a thing, it's happening, and it probably is not even. It feels to me like it's still called a trend, but it might not be anymore, because when you see the big company catching up, when you see the big companies happy to invest money in plant-based products, then you know that you are something has happened. Like it's happening, it's going, it's continuing to go. And then for sure you were talking in the second point about, I call this like the designer's responsibility. Like there are these issues, whatever they are, those that you have mentioned, or any issue that a designer is particularly sensitive about, that we can actually design for, because we take a lot of, we make a lot of decisions, which is absolutely pertinent with your research, right? How we take decisions and why. And the decisions, like it's our job. Am I going to use plastic or wood? Am I going to use an avocado that comes from the other side of the world, or I don't know, cabbage? Am I going to use this or that? Plenty of decisions that to me highlight the responsibility that we have towards, I don't know, the type of designer that we want to be, or the type of human being that we want to be on this planet, really, I guess. So, Doctor, let me reread this. Ozkaramanli, because I always call you there, so I don't, your surname.
You can call me there.
So Doctor there, I'm going to say. You're an assistant professor in human-centered design, and you're here to talk to us about dilemmas and how to deal with them. So, this is so. In the past couple of days, I've been in contact with a potential client who makes fish products, tuna products, etc. But I am 80% vegan. 80% vegetarian, 20% vegan, right? On my road to veganism. But for sure, vegetarian 100%, and I've been for a long while. So that is one example for you of one human being in the design field who is dealing with a personal ethical dilemma. So what is your answer / advice for those of us in the same situation?
Okay, let me get my toolkit. Yeah, it's so nice. I really like it because people who know my research, also my friends who have nothing to do with academia, they always come and say, what should I do? And it's a dilemma that I can really relate to, because I have heard also from my partner, who is also a designer and who is also a vegetarian. He was asked to do a project for a local farm that they want to communicate how they do take care of the animals that they slaughter in the end, but they do take care of them different than, let's say, in mass production in bigger factories and stuff. And we discussed this topic, so I'm a little bit sensitized to the dilemma that you're expressing. And I think it's really one of the things that it's not always so black and white, the choice. I could say definitely don't do it, but that wouldn't be. You have to look inside into your own values and to see what to prioritize in this specific situation. What happened with my partner, for example, these people, the farm, they were really trying to, they were actually on the same side, that they were really trying to communicate that they are doing things differently. And that's a purpose that you can sort of align with. So in his specific case, he did take the project and he did help the people. So I guess the question would be, what is the project really about? Is it something that really violates deep down values, or is it something that you can sort of align yourself with? And then some designers take the pragmatic road, and nobody can really blame them for it because they have to pay rent and they have to pay bills. So I was once invited to a talk that the title was, I want to be an ethical designer, but I also have to pay my rent. So yeah, what do you do in that way? And again, related to that, in one of the design conferences in 2016, there was a group of researchers, as far as I remember, in Denmark, and they wanted to, they had the fur industry sponsoring their research into design ethics. So you can, I mean, by saying no, you're removing yourself from the equation, but you can also stay close to the fire, see what's happening in this industry, and then whether you can sort of disband it from within. Huh? Because if you're outside of the equation, you're always outside of the equation. But if you put yourself in a situation where you're uncomfortable, can you make others also uncomfortable and sort of be an activist, but not the activist that criticizes from the sidelines? Different options to think about.
Definitely. So to take it from here, tell us about your research and tell us about design thinking and dilemmas.
Yes, very good. Thanks. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. This is the moment that you always hope it goes well. There we go. Perfect. You see it, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, very good. So dilemma-driven design, that's my research and my passion and the thing that I think about, every day of the week. If you want to know more about more than what I tell in this talk, you can go to my website, designwithdilemmas.com, and you will find a lot of food metaphors also on the website, because I think it always helps me to communicate my point. The thesis, Francesca, when we emailed with each other, she said, "Oh, your thesis is sitting on my desk, so it would be nice to talk about it and catch up." And on the cover of my thesis, there is a photo very similar to this one of donuts. And it really helped me during my PhD to use the donut example, like this desire to eat something sweet and fatty, but at the same time having this guilt feeling in the background for most people. So whenever I use dilemmas related to food in my PhD project, then I really hit a sweet spot there, because everybody would know immediately what I'm talking about. So
literally
that's
a sweet spot.
Exactly, literally a sweet spot. So dilemma-driven design, I define it as a conceptual design approach. It's at the beginning phases of the design process, when you're trying to still make sense out of all the insights that you gather, that helps understanding, capturing, and using the dilemmas of end users as a starting point to design new products or services. And I really like thinking about dilemmas, because I think these conflicting goals and needs and desires of people really do justice to the complexity of human beings. Instead of really thinking about people as target groups that neatly want one thing at a time, dilemma-driven design really helps you to focus on the relationships between these wants and needs, and then to take those conflicting relationships dilemmas, so to say, as starting points to organize your process. I had the opportunity to do to participate in two large innovation projects related to food during my PhD. At the time, my research group at Delft University of Technology, they were asked to participate in these big projects. And then I was there together with other design researchers, design consultancies, but also food anthropologists and marketing people. So I really got to implement dilemma-driven design and to improve dilemma-driven design through these projects. And one of them was in the context of in Turkey, in an afternoon tea ritual that Turkish housewives usually have, Turkish people in general. It's like 5 o'clock and you get together. Sometimes it's a planned occasion, and sometimes it's together with like your neighbor or your sister who drops by or something like that. But it's mainly women who do this. And there we really went to the houses of people and really participated in the occasion. So that was really more of a ethnographic action research type of thing. But we also used interviews, experience sampling to really understand the emotions, needs, values, and dilemmas of the people in this occasion. And there you see, if I can sum it up, of course, a huge project and lots of insights, but if I can sum it up, there the main thing was the food being a platform for showing care and love. And one of the dilemmas that we captured in that project was, I love to try out new recipes and experiment, but I do not want to fail the expectations of my guests. Because failing is almost a sign of not caring or disrespecting the people who are in your house together with you. And then we use the same method, still dilemma-driven design, still ethnography. And this is, by the way, one of the, just to be able to communicate what this afternoon tea ritual means to these people, this is how they prepare for it. I mean, I have never seen such an elaborate, such varied thing for prepared for guests. Maybe people in Italy do this, but this was for me really exceptional. So here you really see the food as a sign of love for people. Then we did the very same. We implemented the very same methods in a project in the United States. And then there you get very different insights. There the food was really like something that helps me to perform. It's a functional thing. And we got dilemmas like, I want my food to energize me so I can keep going. I can move on with my day and check things off my to-do list. But I also want my food to comfort me. And you can imagine that the food that energizes us are really not the foods that usually comfort us. So that's the types of dilemmas that we captured in that specific context. And when you think about these two projects, there are two things that I really like. The first, how you can use design methods that really originate in design research to understand food and food practices better, and how varied the insights can be across different cultures, and to see like how dilemmas in a specific occasion would play out in a specific culture versus the other one, and that is it's very nice. This is an article that I published that really captures the main insights in my PhD on dilemma-driven design. So if you would want to know a little bit more, I think this is probably the best resource that I can suggest. And it's open source, which is very nice. I really like journals that enable researchers to publish open source. And not only is it open source, it's also a very designerly journal with very nice illustrations and graphics. So it's definitely a journal that I think many design researchers would be proud to publish in.
We can
So
put
this,
the link for this paper in the description of this video later. Okay, when we finish, you pass me the link and we'll put it on the description so everybody will be able to access it.
very good. Thanks a lot. That would be very nice. Then I move on with dilemma. So I, of course, finished my PhD. I think it was in 2017, so already 4 years ago. And then I moved to Liverpool. I worked in Liverpool for some years, and then I moved back to the Netherlands. And now I work in a participatory design group. So in my research group and in the way that we teach, participatory design methods play a big role. So that also gave me the opportunity to look at dilemmas and dilemma-driven design from a different perspective. This is a project that I'm currently busy with and I really, really like. It's a regional project. We have a football club here, Football Club Twente, and the football club has a foundation. It's scoren in the wijk in Dutch, so helping each other, scoring in the neighborhood. And they help the low socioeconomic status families in the region to reach as a community, to form a community and to reach their health, well-being and social participation goals. And the way I contribute to this project is to use dilemmas in dilemma-driven design. If we go back to the way that I conceptualize it in the PhD, is that there's a designer and designer needs to empathize with end users, and then you can use dilemmas as a lens. But then I realized that a lot of people would also benefit from an understanding of their own dilemmas. So that shouldn't be a knowledge that is only reserved for the designer. Because if people can be aware of their own dilemmas, if they can recognize them, and if they can come up with their own strategies to deal with them, that's a very empowering route for these people. So what we do in this project is that we get these people together, and through certain activities that I design, they get to understand their own dilemmas. So it's not me who is trying to capture the dilemmas, but they do it as a community. And they come up with ways that they can address these dilemmas themselves. The only thing I do is I open up my tools and methods to these people. That also means that they have to be designed differently. Before I was mainly designing for designers, and now I'm designing for people so that I can empower them to recognize and deal with their own dilemmas. It's a slightly different way of doing things. And another aspect of my work that has improved since my PhD is to think beyond personal dilemmas. And I think this really reflects the transition in the field, in design research, but also in design practices, that we are not, while we are still focusing on people and products and the interaction and how to design experiences better, design as a discipline has become increasingly interested in how to address big societal challenges, complex societal challenges. This is actually not a new thing. This has been going on since the time of Victor Papanek, who wrote Design for the Real World in the 1970s. But I would say the momentum has picked up in design research and design practice to really see how we can position the discipline and the profession in focusing on systems and society and societal challenges as a whole. So that also means that to look at dilemmas more from a systemic perspective rather than capturing these dilemmas at the micro level and also dealing with them at the micro level. And that brings me to the topic of today, design thinking and its dilemmas, because design thinking is also very much positioned as the way to deal with societal challenges. So this is what you see on the slide here is the 5 generic steps of design thinking. Of course, the first thing we think about, Stanford B School, IDEO, and this is sort of the steps that are being suggested. But the criticism that I raised today is not maybe so much just reserved for this D School and IDEO, but it is how it started from there and then grew to become something that is so elusive nowadays, or at least from where I'm looking. So I'm just going to continue, Francesca, but you can stop me if there are questions.
It's all good. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. And then I just collected some news articles, media items that really talks about design thinking and how excellent it is. And I'll just run through them. This was Forbes magazine. Then it's the next chapter in Design for Social Innovation. And it's also the thing for SMEs to reach business success. And of course, I love all this attention. This is for design, for a relatively young discipline. This is a very nice to be on the news and on at the table. The designers being at the table nowadays. It also, for example, let's say 10, 15 years ago, if I would meet somebody and I say, yeah, I'm studying design, and what is design? And then you explain what design is about, and then they say, oh, it's kind of like marketing, right? And then you think, no, it's not like marketing. And now you meet somebody and small conversation, and then they'll say, what do you do? I'm a design researcher, I'm a designer. And then they say, oh, yeah, I know about design thinking. That's so nice. You reach out to so many people like that. But I'm also thinking that maybe design thinking, at least the way it is being practiced, is a little bit like the pasta pesto of our discipline. It's sort of like the go-to methodology. It's very basic, and it always gonna taste good. So that's really your comfort food right there. Your comfort methodology.
The comfort methodology.
And then what I also do, of course, as part of my job is to read, to also think about what is this movement about, what's happening, and of course there are a lot of benefits to it, but are there things that we don't that we want to sort of rethink or even redesign? And I also here refer to other authors in design research, other researchers whom I really trust and also respect their work. Because after I started reading more into design thinking, I realized that I'm not alone in my critique. And this one is from Lucy Kimball. She wrote this already in 2011, Rethinking Design Thinking. And there's two parts to this title. So I'm quoting from part one. And what she criticizes in design thinking is that she says design is a situated, diverse, and democratic process. On the other hand, when we look at design thinking, when you look at the term, it has thinking in it. So it really frames design as a mainly cognitive activity, whereas actually design is a very embodied activity, and that's what you see on the post-its. When you walk into any design workshop, any design consultancy, any design studio, you see post-its everywhere. And that's for a reason, because design is really about working with the material and materializing things, even if you're not designing something material, even if the output is not per se a product, you are still working with material things. And by calling it design thinking, you're separating mind from body. And another point here is that the term also implies that there is one general type of design practice, but there are many different types of designers, many different types of practices. So we cannot really reduce it down to these abstract principles. And perhaps most importantly, it privileges the designer. It says that, there's this design team, this design consultancy who's gonna come in and then fix everything for you. And that's at least not helpful in certain circumstances. You really need to think about what is the role of the other people. How are they going to participate in this design thinking process? Can they really participate? And the second critique is from this article was not written to critique design thinking, but it connects to it. There's an article from Sanders and Stuppers from 2008, but I think Sanders wrote about it already in 2006. It's about the landscape of design research. And when you look at the map with the circles, the red circles, you see that there's a lot to design research. There's, there's all these little fields, and they relate to each other, and then they're also unique. Some of them are on their own, some of them are growing in parallel. What design thinking did is that it just scraped all of this away and said, this is the way. And it just doesn't do justice to the nuances that design research has and has evolved over many decades. A lot of people within design research, they fought with each other to gain these nuances to the field since the Second World War, but also with other disciplines to really create room for the design discipline and for the design profession. And design thinking came and said, this is the way it happens in design. So it doesn't really do justice to all the nuances that we have. And this is the third form of critique, is that design thinking cannot be used to tackle complex societal challenges because it's not critical enough. It needs more criticality, and that the main reason for this critique is that design thinking starts with empathy. And it says that if you empathize with your users, with your customers, that's you're at a good starting point. You're in a good spot to really tackle this challenge. But empathy on its own is not enough, because societal challenges are extremely complex, most of the time with some sort of history and some sort of ethical or political underpinnings. And empathy is just not going to be helpful enough for you to go about these problems. So that's an improvement point for design thinking if it's going to keep positioning itself as the solution to societal challenges. And the final one is it's at least from where I'm looking and where I'm examining, design thinking really positions itself as sort of like a neutral ground, and where things can happen and it's sort of apolitical. But when this is especially problematic when you try to use design thinking in the public sector. So governments using design thinking to renovate their public services, for example. And the critique there is that you cannot really position design thinking and designers as a mediator between the state and its citizens, because the state and its citizens should be in direct contact with each other. If you place design within this relationship, then it implies that this mediator is apolitical, is a neutral ground, whereas design is never neutral, and our design methods are never neutral. So this is another. When we are using design to address certain challenges, we really have to think about what are the risks that come with it. This is I actually put this slide here. I wanted to bring it up in earlier conversation with Francesca, but when we say design is not apolitical, so design is political. And this is one of the things, one of the projects that I followed back in, I think, 2014 to 16 they ran. And it really shows how design actually can be political, should be political. It's called Conflict Kitchen. It was an initiative in the US. Unfortunately, they ran out of funding, so they are not a pop-up kitchen anymore. But it was a pop-up kitchen would only serve food from countries with which the United States is in conflict with. And through food, it would bring different people who wouldn't really meet with each other and talk with each other, into conversation. And they would do this through food. And they had an excellent visuals, excellent branding strategy. And it just worked for many years. They did Iran, Afghanistan, North Korea, Cuba, and many other countries and cuisines. And most importantly, through food, they opened up debate and a space for conversation. So when we talk about the power of design, I think this is really something where design thinking, food design thinking can be positioned. So what I suggest is that design thinking shouldn't be, maybe it is, but shouldn't be the pasta pesto of our methodologies, but instead design and the thinking and the doing and the practices that come with it is actually a gourmet dish with a lot of different aromas. So its secret is not on the table, but it's in the kitchen.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Dare. I loved it. Yeah, I would say lots of thinking points there, lots of things to write down and think about, later on in contemplative silence. I think it's interesting because I feel like I might see design thinking possibly slightly differently. Maybe than, for example, the vision that you have shared, maybe. And maybe because, like the difference could be that in my mind there is design thinking capital letters, and then there is design thinking small d and small t. So where design thinking capital letters is, the father was ideal and they made this and they gave it to the world, then I think that, to me, then from there, after a while, design thinking small letters was born. And to me, design thinking small letters is a general sense of it's a general blueprint on the phases, on the types of methods, on some methodological issues, some theoretical principles, some blueprint, and so in this sense, then to me, not all design thinking, for example, is political, small d, right? Not all design thinking, whatever. And so, and I say this because, for example, I think maybe this is another. This is how I kind of see design thinking. For me, design thinking small d was kind of a gift. Already, design thinking small d that had already been developing and cooking for a decade or two. Well, not two maybe, but I've been cooking for a while, and so for me it became like a bucket of idea, and I went into it and I started picking up the things that I liked and ignoring the things that to me didn't make sense to me because of my philosophical approach, my methodological approach, etc. So where I came from, I started picking from this Pandora box or from this Mary Poppins bag. And that is how food design thinking was created for me. So I see design thinking small d as, again, a Mary Poppins bag from where each person, each designer, each individual can make their own design thinking capital D. So that's how food design thinking was born. For me, right? So this process, this full process, this methodology that has many commonalities with design thinking capital letters. Of course, it comes from the design thinking field, small letters, but it's its own thing. It's its own philosophical principles that you might align with or not. Its own methodology, etc. So yeah, what do you think? I kind of feel like, and this is actually what I like about this. This is the point that I wanted to make, to discuss with you. I like the fact that, at least from my view, design thinking is moldy. It's something that we can all take from, and that, because in my mind, every designer is going to, at some point, make their own design thinking process. Most of them maybe don't even know it, that they have a design thinking process. But every designer, maybe you study design thinking, capital D, in university, and then you take that and you use it, and as you use it, you start changing things, you start moving methods here and there, and in the end, after, I don't know, 10 years or so, you end up with your own process, your own methodology. And also, by the way, this is exactly my hope with food design thinking. I write it in the first pages of the book. I give this to you, but this is not a rule book. This is a starting point for you to create your own food design thinking process. So, to me, design thinking is like a starting point for millions of possible design thinking processes, as many as there are designers approaching it. What do you think?
Yeah, very good. I think it's good to bring in the point on where design thinking and the term really originated, because it really started in the 1960s. Designers, design researchers at the time starting and thinking about what separates the methods, the methodologies in our field from other fields, because they didn't so much align with the, let's say, positivist, factist direction of very rational based thinking, but they also didn't so much align with the art and the humanities. There is a space in between, and that's what they call design thinking, to separate themselves from the other disciplines, so that they could also make space for a discipline that can grow, that has the future, that is respected, taken seriously. So that's where the term originated. I have also nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of authors that I read from that time, and I learn a lot of things from. And I'm not actually also so much worried about designers themselves, because I teach design. I see these students come in. You want them to, exactly like you said, you give them certain ingredients, and you tell them, okay, now it's your turn to cook up a dish. And with the same ingredients, different groups of students make different things. What I'm really worried about is how other disciplines are viewing design thinking. Because if we go with the approach that is the 5 steps and it's so generic, and then people in health sciences are picking up on this, people in management sciences mainly, because consultancies, there's big money in it, they're picking up on this. It's a nice alternative to the usual ways of planning things. And then when you pick up on it from other disciplines, you don't exactly know what goes on in the design discipline and where it comes from. You pick up on only the 5 steps, you implement it, it doesn't work, and then you say design thinking doesn't work. Well, because you didn't implement it in the way it should be implemented, or in the way that it isn't intended to be implemented. So that's the part that worries me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I feel, on one side, it's beautiful to see design thinking, and you showed some articles, right, that kind of tell us that design thinking is being used by lawyers, policymakers, teachers making their curriculum, etc. On the other hand, you just hope that there is somebody there helping them putting together their own process that kind of knows what they're doing. Because the thing is that design thinking, as you said, can be anything. But I think I take for granted maybe because I come from academia and I come from, before I do something, I'm going to read everything that has ever been written about it, and then I'll make up my own opinion, right? Maybe because I come from that state of mind. I think I often take for granted that when you use a design thinking process, or even more when you design a design thinking process, when you put it together, you have very clear ideas on what I call your design principles that make up your methodology. Even going into the epistemology of the words, difference of the words between method, methodology, process. I always do that at the beginning of every course, of every consultancy group, because we need to make up some grounds. Right? So, there's this. I take for granted that people have these very clear ideas on their principles that sustain the choices, not the design choices, but the design thinking choices of which methods to use at which point, etc. But it might not happen all the time, and that's why I think it's one of the biggest reasons why sometimes it fails, because the reason why you choose a method over another one, or the reason why you tweak a certain method for what you're doing, and the way you tweak it makes the whole difference in the actual quality of your outcome. So, yeah, right. Let me, there's something that I wanted to ask you. I can't remember it. So, what, to somebody just starting into into the design world, food design, for example, in our case, to someone just starting, and in food design also there's there's many people who don't have a design background. So, for example, with what I do with my practice, giving for design thinking is like giving a creative process for you to do design without having studied design, right? But to those who are just starting and then maybe ignore that there is something called design thinking, or maybe they've heard of it, or let's just say to somebody who wants to design, and we know nothing else about this hypothetical person, what would you tell them? What would you suggest them? Because of course, what you study, what you research, and your background. And the discussion that we just had in this sense.
Yeah, I would say, I think I really do agree with the sort of the blueprint idea, the 5 stages, and if you go back to your projects and processes, you can probably really recognize these 5 stages. What I'm really trying to say is that I'm not sure if this is the thing that needs to be emphasized about design as a unique activity, as a discipline, as a profession. So, to answer your question, what I really tell...
in the sense that sometimes design thinking is like more glamour than design. Like everybody looks at design thinking and kind of make a parallel immediate to design.
No, I mean like these 5 activities, like empathize, define a challenge, ideate, prototype, test. These happen, and probably they happen sort of in that order, although it's not linear, and it goes in cycles and things like that. But I don't think that is the thing that needs to be emphasized when we are going to talk about design thinking with the small d, like you said. To me, the thing that needs to be emphasized, but that's really to me. I didn't write an article about this, so it didn't.
Yes.
But it is to me, the main things is what really makes it what really gets you through the design process. What is the attitude? What is the mindset? What are the challenges in that process, and what gets you through it? And for me, these are things like, for example, dealing with ambiguity. K.S. Dorst really writes about this in the core of design thinking. It's the abductive reasoning, because designers do not really start a project with knowing what to do and how to do it. They just know what to get out of it. They just know what they want to have as an outcome. They know about the impact, and they have to work their way back from that impact. So they have to define the what and the how, and that's really the core thing. And with that comes the problem framing and reframing. So you ask why, you look at what am I going to take as the real design problem here, and to not just look at it as a one-time decision, but to really look at it as an iterative process where you say, oh, what if I do this? Oh, it gives me this. I don't like this so much. Let me go back to this. Okay. Oh, this I like better, but let me go back again. So this is, but yeah, what I just explained with my two hands, it doesn't map nicely on a step-by-step recipe, and therefore it's not going to attract a lot of people. Maybe, I don't know, but to me, that would my number one advice is the advice that I give to my students: just start doing. Work, go into the field, talk to people, make things. Because that's where design happens. It's not really in the 5 steps.
It's like design thinking is small d, small d and small t. It's the place that makes everybody in corporate and etc. nervous. They like it, they're attracted by it, but when you tell them we are here to make mistakes, like literally what design thinking is to mess up a whole lot of times and try to figure out how to go ahead. It makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah. There's a very nice another article by Peter Lloyd, also a very respectable design researcher, professor in Delft University of Technology, and the title of the paper is "You Make It and You Try It Out," and that's it. And actually, it's not as simple as it sounds. So that is really the main thing.
So I wanted to ask you about empathy. You touched upon it before, saying that, if I understood correctly, empathy, it's great. We all need to mature it in our process, cultivate it, and finally live it, experience empathy for the people for whom we are designing. But you said that's not alone, it can't get you where you want to get, or something like that. So what does this critique imply? Vision, point of view implies. What is to you the added element that I envision being before empathy? Just because for me in food design thinking is before, but maybe it's later, I don't know. So what is for you the added element, the added goal, the added thing that we should really focus on and think about, that you think would give us all the chances, that all the things that we need to give us more chances to achieve, I think, our common goal, radical innovation, etc.
Well, that critique is mainly in the context of dealing with complex societal issues. So if you're designing a consumer product for a specific target group and your client tells you this is what we want to do, these are the people that we want to sell this to, their empathy is obviously going to be okay and maybe a good starting point, because you want to understand these people, and then based on that understanding you design things. But in the context of societal challenges, what you're dealing with, corona situation, climate change, refugee crisis, all of these things, they're so big and so complex. So you can go and empathize with refugees, but that, whatever you design is not really going to be, it will only be treating the symptoms rather than the root causes of the problem. So there you really need a much more like a macro level thinking. You have to open up, and probably you cannot really do this on your own. You really need to work with other disciplines and other professions. You need to work with ethicists, you need to work with governments, you need to work with activists, non-governmental organizations. So there's a lot there that you need to take in before you can even say, is this a design problem? And that's also something that we don't really do a lot, is to leave it not as a design problem, to say, design can help here, but maybe not as much as other disciplines.
Definitely. Brilliant. So I feel like this has been a wonderful conversation that has lasted 1 hour, and that maybe we can be happy for now. Do you have anything that you want to add before we say goodbye?
I don't think so. I enjoyed it a lot, and yeah. Brilliant. I hope that it opens up also in people. It opens up new thoughts and new questions. That was the idea. So I'm happy with that.
With this purpose in mind, in a moment when we say goodbye, you're gonna please send me an email with the link of the paper to put in the description of this video, and if you want your email address or any way that people, or LinkedIn link or something, any way that people can contact you so they can learn more about design, dilemmas-driven design. Okay. So to all of you who are watching, those information will be soon in the description of this video. Having said that, thank you so much, Professor Deger. Deger is something else. There, and I hope we can have another maybe conversation soon, and then I hope this sparks thoughts and intuition and desires to understand more and be curious about what you do when you design and why you do it, right? The design thinking process that you use. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who has been listening. And yeah, goodbye. See you, I don't know when, for the next webinar. We'll keep in touch.